This is the video for the Walk the Line review. Okay, let's take a look at number 1. It says, consider the following numbers. Plot each number on the number line. So 7 would be here, so that would be 7. -3 would be to the left, so that would be there. 2 would be 2 to the right. 0 is kind of already plotted. -12 would be 2 to the left of -10. 3, -5, and then you have -9. How do you know that each number that you plotted is an integer? Well, we know that integers are whole numbers and their opposites. Okay, next it says to sort the following numbers into the appropriate set. So -12 is going to be a negative integer. 1 2/10 is not an integer because remember, an integer has to be a whole and its opposite, so it cannot have a fraction. 18 is going to be a positive. 10½ is not an integer. -150 is going to be a negative integer. 1 50 hundredths is not an integer. 9 9/10 is not an integer. -3 is negative, and 37 is a positive integer. Now let's take a look at questions 3 and 4. So remember, natural numbers are numbers you naturally count, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Whole numbers start at 0 and count up into the positives. Integers are both whole numbers and their opposites, and rational number is any number that can be written as a fraction. So -11 is not natural, it is not a whole amount, so it is an integer, and it is a rational number because you could write -11 over 1. 2 45 hundredths is not natural, not a whole, not an integer. It is only a rational. 1 is a natural, a whole, an integer, and a rational number. -11 sevenths. That is only a rational number because if you do 11 divided by 7, you do not get a whole amount, so it can't be an integer. Okay, it says write a number to represent the model, a number sentence. So you have 2 positives plus 9 negatives, which would give me -7. Because remember, they cancel, positives and negatives cancel out. So you would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 negatives left over. Okay, now we are on number 5. Use the number line to determine the sum of -3 plus -7. So remember, we always start at 0. So if I go -3, so that means I'm going to the left 3. 1, 2, 3. That's my -3. Plus -7 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's the plus the -7 gets us to be -10. Okay, now number 6. Compare each pair of numbers using the less than, greater than, or equal to. So we first have to take the absolute value. The absolute value of -9 is +9, so that would be greater. Positive is greater than a negative. Next, we have 2 5/8, but then we have 31 twelfths because we need to take the absolute value. Then simplify that. 12 will go into 31 twice, which will give us 24. So we would have 7 twelfths left over. So you could think of this as, well, if I could get a common denominator, I could get 24. So this would be 24, 15 24ths, because I would times it by 3. This could be 2 and 14 24ths, so 2 5/8 would be greater. Next, fill in each blank. So we are at -13. We're trying to get all the way to -40. So we could think of this as 40 minus 13 will give us 7. And then we would have 2. So this would have to be -27 plus -13 would give us -40. So 5 plus what would give me -9? Well, we have to think, I have to go, so I like to think of a number line when I do these. So I'm at 5. I have to go all the way to 0 first. So that's at least -5. But then I have to go all the way down to -9, which is another 9. So that would be a -14. Next, I have 13 plus -8. Once again, draw that number line. You're at 13. You have to get to 0, so that's at least 13 right there. Then you have to go all the way down to -8, so that's plus another 8, which would give me -21. And then check your answer. Work out the problem and make sure it makes sense. Okay, it says name the opposite of each integer. So the opposite of -1 would be +1. The opposite of 24 would be -24. The opposite of -100 would be a +100. The opposite of negative 95 would be positive 95. And the opposite of 15 is negative 15. Remember, opposite and absolute value are not the same thing. Okay, number 9. The change in water level of a pond is shown below. The question is, between which 2 weeks did the water level change the most? So we kind of have to look for each week. Week 1 to week 2. So remember when you go from, if you have a positive and you're going to a negative, you have to take the absolute value. So that would give me 2, so we would have 3 and 6/8 would be week 1 and week 2. Then if you go to week 2 to week 3, once again you have a positive and negative, so we need to take the absolute value and add them. And 3/4, I would go ahead and change that to an 8, so that'd be 6/8. So 1 and 6/8. So this will equal 3 and 11/8, or you could say this is 4 and 3/8. So this is weeks 1 and 2. This is week 2 and 3. So we still have to go and do 3 to 4. So these are also 1 and 3/4. And I'm going to go ahead and change this half actually to 2/4. Plus a negative 1 and 2/4. So if we add those, we get 2 and 5/4, or 3 and 1/4 of a change. So the greatest change is this week 2 and week 3 would have the greatest change because it was 4 and 3/8. Next it says, what makes a number rational? Explain and give at least 2 examples. So a number can be rational if it can be written as a fraction or a ratio. Okay, an example could be like the number 5 or negative 11/12. As long as it can be written as a ratio, it is a rational number. Okay, so now we're on number 11. We're going to solve. So negative 6 plus negative 12 gives me negative 18. Plus a positive 5, we will end up with a negative 13 left over. Because remember, when you have positive and negative, we're actually subtracting. So then we have a subtraction. Remember, we're going to change this to addition, change the 18 to a positive, so 16 plus 18 would just give me 34, positive 34. Okay, now we're going to rewrite this 12 plus, this is going to become a positive 13 plus negative 14. So 12 plus 13 is 25, plus a negative 14 will give me 11, because I would do 25 minus 14. Okay, 42 plus a negative 16. So you would have to think 42 minus 16. That would give me, 6. And you borrowed, so 26, and it would be positive. Next, we have a fraction. Remember, fractions have to have common denominators. So if I have negative 2, we're going to make this out of 15. So that would be times 5, so this would be 10/15 plus 4 and 3/15. So actually subtracting, so we're going to have to rewrite this so the bigger number is in front and subtracting. But we're going to have to borrow, so we're going to make this a 3, make this 18. So then you would have 1 and 15ths. And it is positive. Okay, next we have negative 8 and 49 hundredths plus 11 and 70 hundredths. So this is just adding, so we can subtract them because they are different signs. So we line up that decimal, borrow, make that a 10, so that's a 1. This is 2, and 8 minus 11 is 3. Bring that decimal down. And our positive is bigger, so it is a positive 3 and 21 hundredths. Okay, so let's move this up a little. Okay, so you can mark this one out. I didn't mean to double put that one on there. So we have negative 3 1/2 plus negative 8 1/4, so we need a common denominator, so I'm going to change this negative 3 to 2/4 plus a negative 8 1/4, which would give me negative 11 and 3/4, because when there's same sign, we just add them. Okay, first thing I'm going to go ahead and change this to an 8. So this would be 6/8. We're going to change to addition. And the 4 and 5/8 is going to change to a positive. And then a -5 plus the 4 would give me, so we're going to subtract. So this would give me 1 and 1/8. And the negative is bigger, so your answer should be negative. Let's finish this. We're almost done. Okay, so we have negative 46 and 38/100ths plus a negative 24 and 6/10. So they're both negative, so we can just add them. But remember, we need to line up that decimal. And I'm going to go ahead and add a 0 there. So we're going to have 8, 9, decimal 0, carry the 1, would make this a 7. And it would be a negative because both numbers are negative. Next, we're going to keep, the 34 and 7/10 plus a positive 8 and 6/10. So we're going to line this up. I'm just going to write it underneath real quick. That'll be 13, carry that 1, be another 13, bring that decimal down, and then this would be 4 because you have to carry the 1 again. So you should have 43 and 3/10, and it will also be a positive. Okay, next one, we have 5 and 8/10 plus negative 8 and 45 hundredths. So because they are different signs, we're going to subtract them. So 8 and 4500 minus 5/8. Remember to put that 0 in that placeholder. 5, you will get 6. Bring the decimal down. We borrowed from here to make this 14. So we have 2, and then I have to look which one is bigger than negative is. So my answer has to be negative. Okay. Keep the negative 13 and 62/100ths plus a positive 27 and 9/10. Okay, different signs. We are going to actually subtract. Whoops. Let's do the 13 and 62. There we go. So this becomes 10. We're going to borrow from here. This will make 8, 2, place or decimal 4, 1. Then you look which sign's bigger. Positive is bigger, so it's going to be a positive 14 and 28/100ths. Next, different signs again, so we are subtracting. The more you practice this, the better you are going to get at it. 1, borrow from here, make that a 12. Okay, so you have 3, and then 0, and then the negative is bigger, so my answer is negative. Not sure if anybody noticed a minute ago, but I thought that was the last page. I didn't realize there was a back. Okay, so let's talk about absolute value. Remember, solve what's inside first. It's like parentheses. So if I have the absolute value of negative 19 plus, this is going to change to a positive 14. Now, this will give me the absolute value of negative 5 if I add negative 19 plus 14, which ends up being a positive 5. So your answer is 5. Which absolute value sentence is false? So let's take the absolute value of each of these. This is 7, this is 6, and so 7 plus 6 does, so that one works. This would be 15 minus a positive 8, so that one works. 12 plus positive 2 is not 10, so C is not right, but let's check these others. 11 minus 4 does give me 7. Okay, now we're going to order these from least to greatest. So remember, the bigger the negative, the least it is. So negative 9 is going to be our first number. Then we're going to have negative 6 and 6/10. Let's actually take care of these absolute values. That becomes 12 and 10 and 5/10. Then I'm actually going to change this percent into a decimal just so I remember what it actually is. Okay, so then I would have actually the 78%. Let me put it back as a percent. And after 78%, we would have the 8 and 4/9, then the 10 and 5/10, and then 12. And you could also write these in their form, in their absolute value form. Okay, we have one question left and then we're done. Okay, what is the difference between the greatest temperature listed and the least temperature? So our greatest is 3. And our least is negative 4, our greatest is 53. I missed the 53. So you could say I have 53 plus the absolute value of negative 41, which we know is 53 plus 41, which gives us 94 degrees is the difference in the temperature. Oh, here comes Belle. How much greater was Norfolk's lowest temperature than St. Louis's lowest temperature? Okay, so -3 to -18. We should see that that is a distance of -15 difference. Study for your test. Be ready to ask your teacher any questions that you did not understand or that maybe was not completely explained in the video.